I actually got up early this morning. Sometimes I just wake up and I'm done sleeping. I got up around 4 and I started reading some Jordan Peterson
Mm,
and what you just said reminds me of one of the things that he says, which is, the reason we have memory is so that we can learn lessons. The reason that we have the ability to recollect things is not so we can reconstruct and, try to change it. It's so we can learn the lessons.
yeah.
And I could not agree more. I think that's such a cool thing to read this morning because I knew it, but I didn't have anybody actually say it. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. All right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah, simple. And what I've learned with that is if you don't learn the lesson, it's just going to keep coming back harder and bigger than before until you're finally like, oh, shoot, there's the lesson. That's what I should. Now I get it. That's what I need to do differently now because, sometimes it can start off subtle, but it is a continual retesting and retesting to see if you can actually change for good those habits or routines or patterns or things that you don't want in your life anymore.
So true. And one of the coolest things that I have have learned, I guess, over time is that I'm fascinated by the fact that if I don't learn those lessons, I keep getting them, right? I keep getting the same lesson or something a little more difficult or with a little more hair on it or whatever it is. But then I ask myself the question, the heck does that work? How does that
Mm,
work? Like, who's in charge of that? Who's in charge of making
yeah.
sure I get those lessons that I need? It's a fascinating thing for me to
Yeah.
to ponder because how else could it happen unless, you know, something, whatever that might be, is helping us along, right? Like something is helping us along and giving us those lessons.
Yeah. So then my question for you is, are you the creator or do you believe there's a spiritual higher power type entity or thing that is dictating that specific thing?
I do believe for sure that there's a power and powers greater than me. There's no doubt. And that's been an interesting evolution because I grew up as going to church, Lutheran, Protestant work ethic. That's just, that was Midwestern stuff. And it's everywhere, but it's very prevalent in the Midwest. And so that's how I grew up and we're getting taken to church and that sort of thing. And when I went into treatment and had to start dismantling my belief system that wasn't working for me, for whatever reasons, I had to start looking at things differently, and that included a higher power or a power greater than myself, and and the very simple thing that I came up with back then, because I kind of had a bad taste in my mouth with the religion thing,
Mhm.
was that I'm not the one that makes my eyes see. I'm not the one that makes the grass grow. I'm not the one that makes the universe or the planets, revolve. Uh, and so who am I? Who am I? There's something much bigger and much more powerful than me. And that's what I did my best to align with.
Yeah.
And over the course of the last few decades, the definition of whatever that power is has fallen away and fallen away and fallen away. I don't need to define it. I just need to, set my intentions for how I want to be in this world and allow the universe for sake of, not having a
Mhm.
better word for it, allow the universe to do what it does. And when I do that, it's fascinating how life can flow. And when I fight it, it's a fascinating how life can stop flowing.
That you just nailed 1000% everything, especially in particularly this year that I've been going through. And again, probably gone through this multiple times in our lives, different layers, different ways, different things. But that's where I've gone to. And for me, I've started to look at it as like a co-creation, not like I'm
Mm.
equal with God or source or universe or anything, but we are doing this together. And like you said, the more I'm in alignment with my purpose and what I should be doing, the smoother, easier it is. And the more I'm trying to fight it, almost like fighting, the bigger purpose, that's where the issues can come. So it's an interesting point to try to trust. And that's where my big one has been, sort of take my hands off the wheel and just trust and in that power, but also keep doing the work that I need to do to keep myself moving forward.
100%. And I could not agree with you more. It truly is. I look at it like a partnership,
Yeah.
the co-creation. I'm responsible, and I look at it truly this way. I'm responsible for everything. And everything meaning either I'm responsible for affecting something I need to affect, or I'm responsible for how I'm uh, acting and or reacting to what goes on outside of me and outside of
Yeah.
my life. And it's interesting. Uh, oh Lord, a chapter in my first book that's called The Nouns, and it talks about there are only three things in this world that we can't control. And the three things are the nouns, which is people, places, and things. So
Mm,
everything outside of myself are things that I am not able to control. And the things inside of myself, inside my skin, is what I'm able to control. And if I go about my life from that perspective and then and do life with that in mind, and then allow the universe or source or whatever you call it to just sort of handle the rest, it's a pretty cool trip. And doesn't mean I'm great at it, but I've had enough experience with it now where I know what works.
yeah. And sometimes it takes us a whole lifetime of learning to figure that out. Especially when there's been resistance. I didn't grow up overly religious, so there wasn't like something for me to overcome there, but there was also nothing there. So it's almost like I had to find that on my own, and that's been part of my journey is figuring out what that is. Because for everybody it's different. Some people who've had a very strong positive religious upbringing, that is how they see the world, is through that lens. And then there's other people who've had bad experiences, and that's how they view that aspect of their relationship with God, through that lens. So, again, this is where everybody's different and where we got to find what's right for us, because everything isn't the same for everybody. Everybody sees, views, hears things in such different ways. And it's up to us to figure out what is the right way that resonates with us.
For sure. And so well said, Angie. I think I love to hear that because resonance is another one of my favorite words.
Mhm.
And as we go along, it's much easier to understand what is resonating for us and what is grating for us, right? Like what is grating within ourselves. And that's so important to listen to. And I kind of look at life now. Since I've been doing this stuff and moving, I think moving forward in life, I feel like I go where I'm led, and I just have to slow down enough and quiet myself enough to understand where I'm being led. And it
Mhm.
may not always be the most pleasant thing, like I might be led into something that needs to teach me a lesson so that I can get to something else. And that trust that you talked about, I think it's important for us to understand and to not be too judgmental. And,
Yeah.
this is not always an easy thing to do, but not be too judgmental about the lessons that we're getting, because sometimes it's all beautiful and sunny and cheery and everything's wonderful. And sometimes it's not. But that doesn't mean that the times where it's not are any less important, or, maybe sometimes they're more important than the times that are.
Yeah. Well, and I think for people who have a very high responsibility level, like you talked about earlier, where, we ultimately are responsible for what we create and how we react or don't react to situations in our universe. So I think for some of us, we take so much responsibility that it almost for me, I will miss the lesson because, oh, that must have happened because I did this, and that happened because I did that,
Mm,
and it's almost like so much that that's where the beating up on myself can happen with the judgment and the shame. I thought I was doing the right thing, but obviously I didn't. That was the obvious answer over there, and so again, this is part of that other side of that process is having high responsibility, but yet also understanding that just because it didn't go right doesn't mean that you didn't do the right things in, and there might be something better, there might be a different learning, there might be something else there. But again, this is where don't beat yourself up, don't have that blame and shame over an action you took because you thought it was the right thing and it ended up you thinking it was a wrong thing. So again, this is where all this like being quiet and reflective and like working through some of this stuff comes through.
for sure. It's interesting because I grew up being told I need to pray and I need to pray like this and I need to say these things and et cetera, et cetera. Or, I might be going south where it's really full of fire and sad people.
Yeah,
Which I didn't
for
really like
eternity.
that. I didn't enjoy that when I was young. I was like, man, this is tough, like you're always it just creates fear and guilt.
Yeah.
But I haven't done the prayer thing in a long time. What I do is I I practice gratitude and I say thank
Mm,
you for everything that I have. And I say, I appreciate my family and my friends and what my life is and the fact that I have life, the fact that I am walking around, breathing, eating, and enjoying, this existence. And that's an interesting place because it's easy to be judgmental with ourselves, and I understand that 1,000%. And part of why I don't do the quote unquote prayer thing anymore is because I hear people pray for things and then I think, well, what if I prayed for that and that wasn't in the best interest of everybody involved?
mm,
I think I know what I want, but how do I know that that's right for me? And how do I know it's right for my family? And, I'm not in charge of that whole picture. And that was an interesting realization for me to come to, which is why I just shut up and say thank you
yeah.
because I don't know what's best. I really don't. All I know is what's in front of me to be done and the next right thing, I guess.
And so, how do you know that? Is it through meditation? Is it through a feeling in your body? Is it like all of a sudden a realization about things? Do you have a process for that?
I do, and it's something that I've practiced for quite some time now. It's in the morning. The three things that I do in the morning are I have a breathing practice, pranayama practice that I
Yeah.
do, which is just sort of calming and sets me up for the next practice, which is my meditation,
Hmm.
and that's a just such a simple thing, and I've complicated it for a long long time, and it's just so simple. It's so breath work, meditation, and
Yeah.
then I say thank you. I say thank you for everything that I have, and I try to carry that with me. So my belief is that as I do those things reverberate throughout the rest of my life and through the decisions that I have to make every day and through how I'm relating to the people around me, how I'm relating to my wife or, my boys or whomever it is. Um, it reverberates. And I think that's the crucial thing because it's not, I can meditate and do the breath work and do the gratitude every day and feel like, oh well, I need to get some results today, or
Yeah.
I can just do that work and allow life to unfold in front of me, knowing that that reverberation is going to continue throughout that thread of my life. I hope that makes sense, but that's kind of how
Yeah.
it's worked for me.
No, I like that. I started off doing a lot of meditation and mindfulness, but what's really resonates with me is the breathing.
Mm.
And it's become such a huge part of my life. I've, instilled it with my executives and everything because for me, and I still meditate as well. But it's that really deeping, getting into your body, which for me is great because it gets me out of my mind. When I'm just meditating, I'm in my mind. It's so hard for me to shut it off. But when I'm actively breathing or long breath holding and I'm creating adversity within myself, it allows me to actually shut this off and go inside. And then there's the magic. It was like, oh, there it was. I didn't have to think myself to it or silent myself to it. I like again, it's this co-creation of being active in it that allows space for me to really get the best results. So I love breathing, and I'm a huge fan of gratitude as well, and meditation.
Cool.
All of them, they're all great things.
Yeah. No, I love it. That's great. And I love meeting people who are into those things and who've done and are doing those things and getting the results because that's the message overall. There's a lot of great things, that we can do with our lives and this and that, but I think, the core sort of things that I need to do for me are quiet myself, and in quieting myself, I don't worry about myself. I don't worry about what Daryl needs or what Daryl wants or like that sort of thing, and it and
Mhm.
it changes my perspective on how I am able to be in the world. And so even the simple little things like I'm not in my head when I'm, passing someone on the sidewalk. And, so instead of walking by like this, I can walk by and give somebody a smile, and it might change their day because I'm not worried about me and all my stuff, and
Mm.
that's an interesting place to be. And it's a wonderful place to be because I feel like I'm able to give as opposed to worrying about what I'm going to receive.
Absolutely. And sometimes that's the key, just being in the moment. It's interesting. It reminds me of a story of a couple weeks ago, and I was doing 75 hard. I had to do my outdoor workout. It was in the middle of the day. I'm like, I just got to go get it in because I got this going on and that going on. And it's not awful. I live right by a beach, even though it's cold. I'll go take my dogs there. I purposely went to a space where I could just like, there was no reception, and I'm just going to clear my head, and that's what I need to do. I'm just going to walk. And then in the distance, I recognize, I'm like, wait a minute. I know those people. And we had a client outing that day, and they happened, a mindfulness outing where they happened to be walking on the beach. So here I am out there, doing for myself, but really I was just going through the actions, and there was my group right there to support me in a time that I didn't even know I needed support. And but again, just doing those things in my life, you create these interesting little miracles if you're looking for them, these little synchronicities, these little things where if you're aware, and people think I'm a little crazy because I'm always looking, not looking, but I'm always recognizing them. But those are the little affirmations of, yes, keep taking care of yourself. That ultimately leads you to where you need to go, which for me is taking care of other people as well.
For sure. I think some of those serendipitous things, and this just reminds me of I'll just tell you a little story real quick. It's my wife and I, we didn't start off on the best footing. We went to a business, we met on over a business meeting, and we went out to lunch after with another colleague, and he had to leave, so we just got to talking. We found out that we grew up about 5 miles from each other in Michigan.
Mhm.
Well, we never knew each other,
Wow.
and so I didn't meet her until I was out in Massachusetts. But so this was a few months, and we just, I asked her out, and she said no. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Um, and then we went for a few months, and we talk a little bit on the phone, business wise, and this sort of thing. And anyway, so around New Year's Eve, about probably 5 or 6 months after we met, she asked me to go to a New Year's Eve party, and I wasn't sure I was going to go. It was right after Christmas when she asked me. There were a couple other things that I was thinking about, and in that conversation where she asked me, we talked about the movie Serendipity, and I had never heard of that movie in my life.
Mhm.
No idea that it existed. And so I said goodbye to her and hadn't made my decision about New Year's Eve, and going to the party that she wanted me to go to. And then I went back to my apartment I was in Boston at this time, and I saw, and I'm not a big TV guy, but I turned on the guide and I saw the movie Serendipity scrolling by, and I was like, "Oh, I guess I better go to that party." Because I had never heard of that movie. We talked about it. I went to
Yep.
the party, and that was kind of where we started we've been inseparable ever since. So I'm all about serendipity. I think it's great, Angie.
I love it. I love it. I think, it's so present. It's just an affirmation of the miracles around us. You just got to be open to drawing those, lines between those dots and seeing the magic that's there. And so I feel very blessed when I'm able to do that. I'm like, oh yeah, that's why I do this.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. I love seeing stuff like that.
Yeah. So you have a great morning routine. Do you also have a night routine that you do every day?
I don't. I don't have a night routine. I've got a good friend of mine that actually taught me the meditation that I do as well as the breath work. He's a really cool guy, and he's mentioned that there's a good routine that you can do at night too. But I have not done that.
Same. When I get to the end of my day, I just want to play my stupid Facebook games while I listen to a stupid show, and I just want to. That's my nighttime routine. Is just shut it, not shut it all away. It's just to distract myself, and that's how I actually relax. For me, meditation, not that it's work, but it is part of the routine that I feel is necessary in my life. And so by the time I get to the end of the day, I just want to not think or do anything.
I'm the same way. Yeah, my wife and I'll zone out on a TV show or something, and that'll be that. And by the time we're done, we're our heads are bobbing on the couch. We're getting ready to go to bed. It's been a lot going on almost every single day, and by the time it's bedtime, we're done, and it's completely cool.
Yeah, totally. Good. All right. Last question. How's your diet? Now, I understand the intermittent fasting. I'm a huge intermittent fasting fan. I do that myself. But in those meals that you do eat, what are you most likely to eat?
Normally, what I do is I didn't know they called it warrior fasting. I was doing 20 and 4.
Hmm.
And then I didn't feel like it was providing me. I felt like I needed to just have a little more space there. So went to the 18 and 6. But normally, my right around noon, I will do, it was a little early today because we had our podcast, but normally I'll do cucumber, avocado, maybe a Granny Smith apple, maybe some celery, whatever it is. I'll throw it all in the bullet, along with probiotics, ground flax seeds, chia seed, that sort of thing. And I put it all in the bullet and I drink that down with my supplements, vitamins, that kind of thing. So
Mm.
that's meal number one. And then normally around, 5:30-ish, so try to be done by 6. We'll have some sort of a protein like a chicken or steak or, something like that. And then sometimes it'll be with a vegetable or a salad or something, but sometimes it's just protein alone. And
Yep.
it works for me. I have a lot of energy, and I'm able to maintain a weight and that sort of thing. And it's pretty simple. It's a very simple diet. Almost no processed foods, like I mentioned. It's more about what I try not or what I stay away from than
Yeah.
you know than because there's just so much bad stuff out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's why I don't eat out very often either, because they're making quantity, not necessarily quality. And so then what they're putting in the foods and how they're getting you the food. As I've gotten more and more and more dialed in with my weight and seeing how things affect me and how I feel, I am just like less wanting to go have good meals, because even good meals in good restaurants, they still have crappy oil. Like you just don't know
Yeah,
what you're eating. And when you get to a point where you really start caring about that, you have to be mindful of those things.
it's so true, Angie. We owned a restaurant for about 9 years out on Cape Cod, and I was fascinated um, by just stuff that comes in a plastic bag. You these soups and these things that you're like, oh wow, that's really good, and it comes from Cisco in a plastic bag. It's some and there are restaurants that make homemade soups and that kind of thing, but like you said, the oils, the stuff they squirt on the grill before they throw something on the grill, I don't even know what that is. So
Right.
it's a little scary out there if we're not very conscious of what we're putting in our bodies, for sure.
Absolutely. And at the same time, I understand why people, are driven to it. It's cheaper, it's faster, it's easier, all the things. Whereas, when you start to pay attention to that stuff, I don't mind taking the time to make myself a good meal that I know, all the ingredients are there. But is it the cheapest, fastest, easiest? No, it's not, but it's definitely the best. So it's almost like you got to work harder to maintain or have a good grasp with the food and everything that you're putting in your body. It's more work.
It is. It is. But so well worth it, right?
Yeah,
Just the
absolutely.
inflammation and how you feel every day, and it's fascinating how different it is. Intermittent fasting is. I had some intestinal issues for a while,
Mm.
and they've been pretty much asymptomatic for over a decade now. But um, the intermittent fasting was a huge thing for me to change my life.
I love it. For me, it once I figured it out, I was like, this is the missing thing because you're raised on 3 meals a day, plus snacks, plus appetizers, plus desserts. Like we are just like groomed to overeat.
Yeah.
And the first time I did, I think it was like first I started out with a 24-hour fast, then I did a 3-day fast. And then I added food back in. It made me realize like how much overeating I was doing because I thought that I needed it. And I'm like, well, no wonder you're overweight. Look at you're eating as much as like a man or a grown, whatever. And so the intermittent fasting really helped me take control of portion size. And then it made it acceptable for me to spend more on really good food because I'm only eating like one really good meal a day. So the
Mhm.
quantity went down so much that I could then afford the quality that my body needed and wanted. And then I felt so much better because, like you said, with intermittent fasting, our body's not trying to process food all day, every day. It's in this little window and it makes you feel so much good. But it's such a great test on realizing your relationship with food, how it makes you feel, how it doesn't make you feel when you're going towards those snacks because of something that's going on internally, emotionally, or that otherwise. It's a fascinating thing to put yourself through to sort of really recognize your relationship with food and what you need and what you don't.
So true. I've thought about because I see so much and I've read so much on carnivore diets and
That's the one I do.
keto and that sort of thing,
Yep.
and I haven't engaged. I want to do a like say a 90-day carnivore diet and just to see, just find out. I don't think it's going to harm me in any way. So I think it
Mm-mm.
would be a pretty cool thing to jump into. So after the new year, I got to get through football season. I
Yes.
got to get through Christmas. Yeah, there's
Uh,
a lot of
all the
eating yet
things.
to be done. I'm so
Yeah.
yeah, I'll
And
have to.
football season can be very stressful.
It can be very stressful. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a Lions fan, so
Oh, we're going to be playing each other.
I
Oh, that's our
know.
do or die. You guys are going to destroy us this year.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I never count out the 49ers. I truly don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a good team and they're well coached, and Brock Purdy is just he's tough. He's a winner. So
Yeah.
yeah,
He
I
is. We're just decimated. I mean, we might have a four-string running back on Thursday night. So we are not in a
uh
good place at all. Bosa might be out for the whole year. So yeah, we're not primed for a win on that one. And I gotta say, if it's not us, I really am rooting for you guys. I love your team. I love your coach. You're like the Cinderella story. I would love for it to be you guys if it's not us.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm a refugee of the Lions. I was just it was just a it was My dad, and rest his soul, he passed away in 2013, but his entire life he loved the Lions.
Mm,
And he said, the Lions haven't been haven't been good since 1957, which was, when they won the world championship at that time before they called it the Super Bowl. And ever since that time, he had to, sadly go to his grave without the Lions being good, and he cared immensely.
yeah.
I don't, I care. I don't care like he cared back then, and but it's a wonderful feeling. I feel like I'm experiencing this for him, for my
Yeah.
dad, which is kind of a cool thing because it just feels good for them to do well.
Well, I think the only key, and I believe you guys have what it takes to go all the way, but you guys got to figure out how to pay off those refs, man, because they're just going to side with KC over and over, even when it's
Yeah,
so blatant and it's so obvious. And it's like they don't need the help, refs. Like,
right.
come on, can we change this narrative this year already?
Yeah, yeah. I don't disagree with you. The amazing games that they have won, where you'd think, you know what, there's just no way,
Yeah.
and they end up pulling it out, and
Yeah, because a
sometimes
couple
it's
missed
crappy
calls or oh, we
calls.
didn't see that holding or that wasn't a false start, even though it clearly was. It's like, dude, it's so obvious. Stop it.
So true. Well, I
I
would
know.
love it if the Lions show up, if the Lions get to the Super Bowl and they beat Kansas City. I'm going. I don't care what it takes. If they go to the
Yes,
Super Bowl,
as
I'm
you
going.
should.
Yeah.
As you should. Have you ever been to a Super Bowl?
I have. Yeah, I have. A couple of times just yeah, it was a very, very cool thing, but never a team that I cared about.
As a Lions fan, yeah.
Never a team that I cared about. It was just
Yep.
going for going's sake.
Yep. Yeah, I went to the 49er Super Bowl where they played the Ravens. I took my son there, was that 12 years ago? And it was just devastating, but an interesting experience because you have fans from all over every team and all over the world. So it's not like a home field advantage kind of thing. It's a very electric environment. And then last year when the 49ers went, I went to Vegas. I did the Super Bowl experience, which is like all the games and the venues and all the fun stuff, just all 49ers, all football. I love that. I did not go to the game because I did not want to go through that again. I had a feeling.
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't blame you. That's Kansas City is for whatever reason, they do have Patrick Mahomes, they have some great players and, but yeah, I'm with you on the refs.
All right. Well, let's get you to that Super Bowl this year. Let's get the Lions there. And believe me, I'm not anti-Niners. I just we've been watching this a long time. I
Sure.
know what it
Yeah.
takes to win a Super Bowl. And when you're like at half capacity, you're not gonna do it. And so I'm really rooting for you guys. I love Eminem. I would love for
Oh
to
yeah.
see him get that win as well. He's always been a big supporter and a big fan, and he was real angry at us last year. So I would love to
Yeah.
see you guys take it.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So when our listeners want to reach out to you, they want to get your books, maybe they want to connect, what's the best way for them to find you and to create that connection?
The best place to find me, anything about me and my books, et cetera, is my website, which is daryldittmer.com, DARYLDITTMER.com. My books are both on Amazon. When I Stop Fighting is my first book. When You Stop Fighting is my second book. If
Ah,
you just either type that in or type my name in, they'll pop up on Amazon. I also did audiobooks in my own voice, so that was kind of a cool experience as well. So
I
those are
love
the
that. I
best
think that's
places.
imperative if you're going to write a book. It should be your voice. Yeah.
I agree 100%. A good friend of mine who wrote a wonderful book that I loved, and I read it before I was able to meet him, but he had AI do his audiobook, and I said, dude, come on,
Wow.
you got a great voice, just get it out there. I think that would be tough to listen to for me,
Yeah, absolutely. Then everything just sounds the same. So where's the difference? Yeah.
right?
Okay. Well, with those two titles, now I'm curious, is there going to be a third book? And what would that title be?
There is going to be a third book, and we talked about the resonating thing and reverberations and all that sort of stuff. So it's probably 80 to 90% outlined, and
Wow.
I haven't looked at it in probably 6 months. I'm going to know when I need to start writing it, and I just don't know when that's going to be.
Yeah.
Because I'll come up here in my office and I'll be a shut-in for I'll have my robe on, I'll get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'll just go to the computer and I'll start writing. So my one of my mentors said to me, and I'll keep this short, but the reason I titled the books the way I did is he said to me one time as I was wrestling with life, which I have been known to do, and I was, my either 19 or 20 at the time. He said, Daryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting stops.
Mm.
And that was, a turning point in my life in terms of my understanding of how this whole ride works. And so when you stop fighting is my second book. When I stopped fighting is my first book, and I was thinking about calling my third book When the Fighting Stops.
Mm.
But we'll
Perfect.
see. I'm
Perfect.
I'm TBD.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I will be keeping a lookout for that and looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I hope you have an amazing holidays. Enjoy the heck out of all that great bad food that we so much enjoy, and time with your family. It's such a great reminder to be grateful and be with the ones we love.
Certainly is. And thank you so much, Angie. I had a wonderful time and wonderful discussion, and enjoy the holidays with your family, and go Niners, go Lions. We'll see where it ends up.
Awesome. Love that. Thank you. Let's go.
All right.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.